Welcome to the Family Goals Podcast with Davey, Pollack, and Pastor Jay. My name is Joel House, and the purpose of this podcast is to encourage you to grow closer to God, to strengthen your marriage, and to inspire your family to reach its highest potential. In this episode, we have two guests, the wives. Both Lindsey and Jennifer join us today, and as Davey would say, what could go wrong? Here's the conversation.
Special today.
It's his first date. You should have heard him.
I've heard on the last few.
Tony Dungy.
Can we?
She just said I've heard the last few.
I've heard you call him out about it. I wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
I'm not a professional speaker.
But
I guess I am.
You didn't stay
I
at the
kinda
Holiday
am.
Express.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of your job, but
Kind of are.
Jennifer, I amazed her that every week. Like, I can't believe you get paid to speak because.
And I don't know when to correct him and when to just let it roll, but
well, that's something we need to talk about in today's episode because you got to know when to call out your spouse or back them up or.
Someone sent me an email the other day. They were trying to encourage me about speaking the truth from the Word of God and the message, but then they said something about, I just love that you're from South Mississippi. You're speaking the truth. All right, so we're gonna get started here.
all right, yep.
I mean, we're kind of already started. So we don't need. I mean, there's nothing to really do.
So we have the First Lady, Jennifer Howes, back again on the podcast.
Yeah, he said I'm taking over, but I'm not.
Back by popular demand.
We had
a lot of people
Like
that
one or two.
subscribed, liked, and said more House, more First Lady.
First Lady, please.
Okay.
But also we have the wonderful, the talented, the amazing Lindsey Pollack.
Thank
That's
you.
right. Yes.
Quite an
Excited.
introduction.
Yes.
She's never put headphones on in her life. No. She's extremely shy. What could possibly go wrong?
No, she's going to be
gonna be
great.
great.
Yeah.
Be great.
Lindsey, we're so happy to have you, and we're looking forward to hearing your perspective because we hear a lot from Davey
Yes.
and his opinions. Not that you are strongly opinionated.
Yes, there's no denying that. I told you when I started when I started my TV career, what I called my agent. I'm like, I think I could do this. This is when I was in my neck brace, and I was like, I think I could do this TV stuff. And they're like, really? Why? I was like, I'm obnoxious. I'm loud. I'm opinionated. I'm like, I think I check all the boxes to be on television. So yes, 100%.
And Lindsey is the opposite.
Antithesis, correct. I mean, complete polar opposites. Yes, that's why it works so well.
That's right.
Well,
Balance.
I'm so looking forward to hearing your perspective. So let's talk a little. Y'all started dating. How old were y'all?
8 and 6.
I was 14.
Okay.
I was going in. We met in summer. I was going into my sophomore year of high school. He was going to be a senior.
And I was an
He was
old
18.
senior. She
I was 14
a
and he was 18, yeah.
young sophomore.
Did you get held back for sports?
No, I got held back because I failed kindergarten. So I had to go to
Back when
readiness.
they had readiness.
So did Jolyn.
Hey, Jolyn did that.
readiness.
Yeah.
But it was good because we were moving from Texas, so he did kindergarten in Texas, and he more or less failed. Then we moved here, and they had readiness, so we got him in, and it was perfect.
I'm very thankful
Yeah.
we did. I mean, I'm thankful my parents did it. They did it because off of a drawing. They said I drew a picture of my family like without heads or something, and they were a little bit disturbed or something, and they literally put me in readiness. But my mom will tell, and you can back me up on this. Kelly will tell my kids all the time, "Oh, he was a straight A student." So tell them about the report cards we found the other day.
I think we were
Kelly
there for
found.
Easter, and she had pulled out all of his report cards from elementary school. The grades really weren't.
What did they all
But
say?
they do the teacher comments in the columns. All of them talked about he doesn't really listen to authority. He's really trying the self-control thing, but
every
single
one.
It was really funny to read out loud.
Yeah.
Your kids can use that against you now.
It is what it is. I mean, it's the truth. That's for sure.
It's great.
Don't be like daddy, right?
That's right.
There's two schools of thought. It's just like with grades. We're like, be like your
No,
mother.
it just proves you have energy since day one.
Right.
Lots of energy.
So high school sweethearts.
Yes. So we met 14, 18. So he was only in high school for a year and then went to Georgia. But we stayed together, dated while he was there for 2 years. I finished out high school.
I went to prom twice.
He did.
in
He was a
college.
rock star.
Nice.
Came home. Yeah. Then I went to Georgia, followed him there, and I stayed for 2 years. And then we pretty much knew he was going to get drafted. So it was, do we try and do this long distance thing, or do we go ahead? And we knew we were at that point, we had dated for 4 years. We wanted to get married. So he proposed in December. We got married in May. He got drafted April. We got married in May, and then we moved to Cincinnati in June. I was 19 years old.
Wow.
He was 22. It was a whirlwind for sure. And then he broke his neck, unfortunately, we were there it was your second season. So we'd only been married for a year and a half. So at 21 and 24, I guess, our worlds kind of got turned upside down. And then right after that, well, not right after, I guess a year, he decided it was a year of rehab and trying to figure out, do we want to continue this NFL career? What are we going to do? But we both knew we wanted to have kids like real young. We both wanted to be parents. That was always a big part of what we
How many did we want?
We wanted 4 to start with.
We wanted 4.
We did.
Now we want 2.
It's not too late.
In. We can stop the podcast right now.
You could have the grandchild like we did.
Hey, anything's possible, but yeah. But I wanted, and it was all perfect timing because he was ready immediately. Like when he got drafted and we moved and we were married, he was like, let's have kids now. I really wanted to finish school, get my degree.
She's a Bearcat.
I am. So I'm a Cincinnati Bearcat. So we waited until after the injury and then got pregnant pretty quickly after. But it was like it gave us this really joyous moment after this really kind of hard moment. And at that point, it was like a no-brainer for him. I mean, it really was all his decision. I would give an opinion, but, it's his life, it's his body, it's his career. And he just said, I want to be able to hold my kids, all of them, and there was always a chance if he went back to play that if he had the same injury, he could be paralyzed, which there's a chance of that for every player out there. But it really, to me, seemed like it was a no-brainer for him. I mean, I'm sure he had some inner struggle with that, but so he just decided he was going to walk away and pursue other things. So Nicholas was actually born up in Cincinnati, and
we always told him he was born in the same hospital as Steph Curry and LeBron James. He wasn't, but we always told him that.
Not at
they were
all.
born in the same hospital in Akron. Did you know that? Steph Curry and LeBron.
No.
And I always told him that, and he's like, and then when he got older, he started telling his friends. I was like, I was just kidding. That was
We didn't live
not
near
true,
there.
buddy.
But yeah, and then so during that time when I was pregnant and he knew he was pretty much done, he started pursuing and that's how the radio thing came about. And he would watch Mike and Mike in the morning when that was on TV, like every day when he was in his halo because he couldn't do anything. I was student teaching at the time, so I was leaving every day to go to school, leaving him at home. He couldn't drive, so he was bored to tears.
She gave great sponge baths, though. It was amazing in my halo.
I did have to do that.
She had to clean my sights, my scars, and then my halo on the back and the front. Like, she had to be my nurse right away. It was definitely kind of hard on her, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, it all seemed like such a whirlwind at the time.
Seems like 100 years ago,
it does. It feels like forever, but
we're getting old.
But it all kind of, looking back now, it all makes sense. It got us to where we are. So he reached out to a local, because we knew at that point if he wasn't going to keep playing, we weren't going to stay in Cincinnati. I mean, we loved it. We had made friends. Where we lived, we loved. But, if he wasn't playing, we were moving back home to family. So that's when he reached out to his agent and local radio and said, I think I can do this thing. I watch Mike and Mike. I can do that. So they gave him like a trial run on, I don't even know what radio show it was, but
790.
790, okay. And he did great, of course. He's got a great personality for it. And
it's hard.
So,
it's harder than you think. Pastor Jay makes that. He shows you that every week on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's trying to put sentences together. Radio is tougher than doing your sermon, don't you think? Painting a pic, because you have to paint a picture without using your hands.
Yeah.
Like you can't smile. Like when you're up on stage, you can smile, you can show things. When you're on a radio, you got to articulate, which is not good for defensive players. I digress.
Well, the hardest part for him was he'd have to do these reads for like sponsors.
Oh my gosh.
And he doesn't do teleprompter. He doesn't read notes. Like that's not his thing. He's much better just off the cuff. And he gets so frustrated because you have to read these sponsor ad things. And he's like, and he'd fumble over his words. And
every
word.
time. If we found those, I could probably still be fired from ESPN. It was so bad. It was Pro Flowers. Remember that one?
Yeah, you did do that a lot.
You do like hey, buy your significant other flowers for Valentine's Day. Call 1-800-PRO Flowers. I remember my co-host didn't show up from one of my radio things, and it was Mike Bell, and he was crazy, and he was awesome to work with because he just ran everything, and I just answered questions and just fit in where I got in. And he didn't show up one day. He was 5 minutes late, so I had to do 5 minutes. I went through like 80 pages of notes. Like I just literally read as fast as I could. It is, I mean, that's what people don't understand how hard that is. We have at church when those kids get up there and share their stories, and they're 11 years old, 12 years old. I'm like, y'all have no clue how tough that is. Like you're going to make fun of those kids or say something, make a comment, I'm going to slap you. Like that's what we do here at Greystone. We slap you if you don't get out of line. But it was really tough, very hard.
Well, tell us how y'all, because now fast forward all these years, you're sold out for Christ. Your whole family's centered around it, what y'all do every day. So tell us how that happened. When did you surrender to Christ and kind of that part of the story?
I grew up in a Christian household. Church was, I was christened as a baby. I grew up in the Methodist church, so I went through confirmation. My dad was my Sunday school teacher. My mom worked at the church my whole life. She actually just retired from the church maybe 2 years ago. So it was always in my life. And when I met Davey, he had just come to Christ. And I think he's told that story on the podcast. He did not grow up in the church, totally opposite backgrounds. But he was like on fire for Christ when I met him. So it was really great timing. I was still going to church. I had switched from my home church to a church where a bunch of my friends from school were going. So I was in a really good place with that. He went off to Georgia, FCA. He got huge into FCA. The team chaplain became like his mentor, best friend. He actually ended up marrying us. He was our pastor at our wedding. So we had a basis from the beginning in our relationship. It was very important to both of us. We knew we both wanted to be virgins. Neither one of us drank. So, we did start out with a pretty, quote unquote, easy start as far as that goes. We weren't, fighting against each other's morals and values and our faith. And then when we got...
Which, by the way, that would have been really, really difficult if we weren't.
Yeah.
And because if you're
especially living apart for those 2 years when he was in college and I was in high school, that could have been bad.
Yeah, but it's just very difficult if you're not, and we've talked about this before, but if you're not equally yoked, if you're not living for the same thing, it's impossible to really kind of do it. Like we say it's easy. Nicholas asked me this. I was talking to Nicholas about this the other day, but we're talking about being virgins before, wedding. I was telling him what the Bible says about that. And I think God honored us because of our decision and what we did. But I was like, it doesn't mean that stuff's easy. Like, it doesn't mean it's easy when you have somebody that feels the same way. Like, it makes it easier. But I heard somebody talk about this one time. Like, the most time that men struggle with porn is at night. Like, before you're going to bed, you're tired, you're worn out, like you're just exhausted, and you're scrolling through your phone. Like, you're scrolling through your phone and you see things. Like, and so, like, you have to be able to understand, like, I got to remove myself from those situations. I need to get rid of my phone at night. I need to put my phone somewhere else. Well, my phone's my alarm clock in the morning. Well, buy an alarm clock, dummy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but like Floyd Money Mayweather was the best when he was in boxing at not getting hit. He was the best. Why? He didn't put himself in situations to get hit. But it's the same thing. Like, when you're surrounded by people that make those decisions and convictions and live by them and hold each other accountable and make it a priority, like, it makes it a lot easier. I'm not saying it's easy. It's still difficult. It wasn't easy for us to still maintain that and do that. Like, we wanted to, but there's still moments when you don't want to, like when you think differently. So continue.
Yeah, no. And even, when we dated, we dealt with it, but even now in marriage, I see, so like when he was in college for those 2 years and I was, he would go out with friends. I wasn't with him we'd see each other on the weekends, but there was a lot of time apart. And had it been where he drank and he wasn't a virgin and all, like, it could have been a very non-trusting relationship, lots of jealousy, that kind of stuff, but it never even
Especially as beautiful as I was.
Oh, yeah. You were amazing.
That was
but it just never crossed my mind to doubt what he was about. And now in our marriage, same thing. Like, we have friends who, their spouses do drink. And if they go out for a guy's night or something, they're a little concerned or worried. Like, and that we don't have to think that way, which is very freeing. And I think that's been a huge part of why we don't argue about really dumb things and that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, so I followed him to Georgia, started hanging out with the team chaplain as well. He already had surrounded himself with a really good group of Christ followers. But I didn't really have my group, I guess. I mean, I kind of spent my 2 years at Georgia just,
hanging out with me.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do the sorority thing. I was really into my grades. So I was going to go to class and then I was going to hang out with him. And I traveled for all the football games. Like that's what I was going to do. So I didn't have, I still had friends, but I wasn't part of a Bible study. I wasn't going home to my church or anything like that. So I would say moving to Cincinnati at the time we did was huge because we met the team chaplain and his wife there, who were much older than us. They had 4 kids already. I'm 19 years old, but the wife took me under her wing. He took Davey under his wing. I mean, they were amazing. And she got me into a women's Bible study. He got both of us into a couples Bible study with the team. And I would say that was a really big turning point for us, especially me. Seeing now, like, okay, I'm a grown-up. I'm no longer a little kid. I'm married. Like, we're starting a life here. And what it meant to have, like, a Christ-centered family, even though it was just the 2 of us. But getting to watch them and how they were raising their children and their values was huge. And then when he broke his neck, like, I honestly don't know. I mean, we would have made it through. But I feel like it would have not been as, not easy, but easy. Without having had that support there and already having that foundation from them.
But what I see, and I've never seen this till now, by the way, because she's talking about it, it's kind of weird to hear somebody talk about your life, but like every step of the way, we had people in our lives, like when I got to Georgia, FCA, team chaplain, like how important is it for all of us as we go through life to find those people, like to plug into those people? We also have a time like when we moved back to Georgia and we didn't have that. And we had friends that were different than us and that weren't pursuing that. They were good people, but they were not pursuing that. That wasn't their main focus weren't to be godly people. They weren't trying to have great marriages. That wasn't like list at the top of their list and be great examples to their kids all the time. And guess what? That was some of our worst years. And we almost didn't make it through those years. It was really, really difficult. But when we did find team chaplains and we did find like you guys, when we go surround ourselves with people that have experience, that have been successful, not that talk about being successful, that have walked it for a long time, that have experience, and you see it, like, it's made a big difference. It's made a huge difference in us growing individually and growing together as a family, and then learning how to do it as a family, being around good families that absolutely do that absolutely pray together. That, the golf tournament the other day, it was awesome. The day before the golf tournament for our foundation, it almost makes us cry every single year. And I almost, especially me, I know, but she's not as much of a crier as me. But I'm sitting there and I'm looking out and we got an army of volunteers. I mean, we got 20, 30 people, like families that just come with their kids, and it doesn't matter what they're going to be there, like, and they're going to support us. Like, and it's crazy. And we just huddled up and we prayed before the event because we set it all up the night before. And we've prayed for, rain and to stay away and to be able to finish the tournament. But it's just, I mean, all those people would sit there. That's what they're in their lives, and they'll absolutely do that. They'll pray for us. They'll pray with us. So
well, and the reason why is y'all have invested in them. Like, it's mutual. Like, they love y'all, but y'all have poured into them, opened up your home, loved on their kids. And that's Jonathan and I talk about y'all occasionally, and we'll say, you're on the road, but you're back in church on Sunday. Lindsey is volunteering in the kids area on Sunday morning. Y'all are serving with the students. You're leading kids to Christ. You're baptizing kids. Like, y'all are super busy, but you've made it a priority, and it's really admirable. I mean, you're living for Christ. And so, like, how did y'all make those decisions? Because you're asked to do a lot of things, I'm sure, but why is that a priority?
I was getting to where he was going with that. So at Cincinnati, we had a good thing going, but we decided to move back home. And while it was great, we got to be near family. for the first year, we lived in Buckhead in this tiny little condo while he was on radio. We were building a house. So it was me and Nicholas all day, every day, cooped up. Like, I pretty much just kind of removed myself. Like, I just was mom. I was raising a kid. He was off at radio for 4 or 5 hours a day. Then we had Leah. Then he started traveling. And so I'm a stay-at-home mom. You know, I mean, I have friends, but I'm still not, like, plugged in, really. He starts traveling. I have 2 little babies, and I'd be lying if I said there weren't times I looked at him and was like, I hate you. Yeah. Like, you're on the road, you're away. And in fairness, in the beginning, I thought he was off having a grand old time. I didn't really understand how hard he actually had to work until I went on a first trip, and I was like, this is awful. Like, you really have to study, and, like, this is awful.
Russell, it was one of the most exciting games in the history of college football. Russell Wilson threw the Hail Mary at Michigan State. People that are diehard fans, you'll know. And Lindsey was there with me, and she was asleep on the bus. And I was on the field. She was exhausted. I was like, after that point, yeah, it was nice. Every time I went on the road, she was like, yeah.
Well, they're up at like 4 a.m. They do the show, and then they sit and watch football all day and take notes and study. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. I'm going to sleep.
Well, I do think, like, he and I were talking the other day, one of the hardest times in our marriage for me was young kids. He gets to go off and do, and he is working, but in my mind, like, you don't have to think about the kids. Yeah. You don't have to think about childcare. You can do whatever you want whenever you want. If I want to do anything, I have to find a babysitter. Yeah. And now my perspective is much different, but at the time.
But it's not fair. I mean, it is harder on the women. Like, there's no, like, and that's, if you have new kids and you're a husband, you listen to this, you probably should take note of that, because that's something that we all screwed up. Probably Pastor Jay would say the same thing. And here's the thing. Women don't take time for themselves like men do. Like, we have no problem going, hey, I'm going to play basketball. But, like, y'all don't, I don't know, women just don't have
guilt.
Mom guilt. And I just don't think y'all have the, like, men like to play cornhole and pickleball and whatever, basketball, whatever it is. Like, we love that. Like, when we played after and we played pickleball, we love that. Like, it's awesome. We thrive on competition. And I don't think women have that as much. So I think it makes a difference, because we have things that we go and enjoy, and we get a break and we turn our brain off and we go compete, and y'all don't have those things. And
well, also, like, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. In my mind, if you're a good Christian woman, you're the homemaker. You're at home with the kids. And so it's just, it was ingrained in me. Like, that's what we do. And then I learned later that I'm more fulfilled when I'm doing some things outside the home, too.
Well, and you're good at, that's one of your passions, and that's what you're good at. And you're nosy, remember? You said that. You're
pushy,
bossy,
all those things. Bossy. Yeah, it's true.
But I think, just to talk about Lindsey real quick with that stuff, like, her small group this year has been one of the most amazing things to watch. How many did y'all start with? Like,
probably 20, I don't know, 15 to 20 the first week.
And then they end up having like over 32 girls that come every Wednesday.
What age group is this?
In her group. Sixth grade. Just sixth grade. I mean, it's crazy. And she's baptized, or like Leah says, baptized. She's baptized, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 of them this year. And so back to her question, how do you do that? How do we?
Well, so I would say during that time when the kids were little, he started traveling. We did eventually, when they were 1 and 3, got plugged in at Greystone. We had some friends introduce us to Greystone Church, so we started going, which that was step 1. We needed to get back into church, and that was great. But the kids got a little older. They started playing sports. That kind of became a priority. We were hanging out with a friend group, like Davey's talked about, that, you know, we played sports with them, but that was really the only thing we had super in common. Like, marriage wasn't high on the priority list. Just not great focus for life. And we got tied up into that. And we went through some really couple hard years when our focus wasn't, you know, Christ first, family first, then all the other things. So after that, I mean, I reached out to Jennifer. I know Davey talked to Jonathan. We had some other counsel, and just kind of really showed us how our priorities were off, and we hadn't put, you know, each other and our family first. And we had to reevaluate the friends we were hanging out with, where we were, all those things. So we kind of made some really hard decisions, let a lot of people go from our lives. Moved our kids into a completely different county to play sports, and switched the campuses that we went to. We stayed with Greystone. We didn't want to leave Greystone, switched campuses.
Well, we drove for a while.
We did.
To Greystone.
But anyways, I would say at that point, after going through that time, we realized, okay, we were going through the motions and we were going to church, and I can't speak for him. I think his faith has always been pretty strong. I think mine had dipped a little, and mom was at the top of my priority list, and I was making no time for myself spiritually at all, even though I was going to church, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And it was a wake-up call, like, okay, if we want this to survive and this to work, like, you got to do something. So I started getting involved, volunteering, like wanting my kids, you want your kids to see you living life the way you want them to live life, like you can't just say we're going to live a Christ-centered life. You got to actually do it. So I think that was the big moment where we started really getting plugged in. The kids started traveling with Davey. Like we made it all, like it didn't have to be separate lives. It can be an all inclusive thing. We go to church. That's when he was coming home no matter what and going to church if at all possible. They get to see Daddy do that. We knew when they got old enough, and we talked about it years before they even got old enough, that we wanted to be plugged in on Wednesday nights. Like kids involved in church became a huge priority for us. We didn't want to be just the sports family. We wanted to also have the church going. So then when they both became middle school age, so Nicholas is 7th and Leah is 6th, it was a no-brainer. We knew we wanted to. We've been doing the sports camp thing every summer and those kind of things, but when it became time that we could be up here for student ministry, we knew we wanted to do it. And so we both started this year with small groups, and this has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. And throughout the time, I've been in multiple women's Bible studies with Jennifer and other people leading. And so I think you can't just hope for the best. You have to actually, be intentional and do the things, seek out. And like he said, I'm pretty shy. I'm not the first one to walk up to a stranger in the room and strike up a conversation. So for me to like seek out a small group of Bible study, those kind of things is just not me. But it got to a point where I realized, well, it's got to be me. Like you gotta learn to do those things. You can't just be mom and everything else go, be on the back burner. So we started doing small groups together too as a couple. We hadn't done that really in the beginning of our marriage since Cincinnati. When we left, we just kind of stopped doing anything as a couple as far as, faith-based went. So small group has been huge for us. And then we started leading our own couples small group 2 years ago. And that's also huge. So I don't know. I guess it all just, you go through some tough things and you realize what you got to adjust. And so now we are where we are. And we have lots of growing to still do, but
I think we all go through tough times, and we hear that. But I think the biggest thing is you're going to keep going through tough times unless you learn from them. Like
and I feel like the tough time, once you get to the other side, you realize I can get through hard things, like with God, with my Christian friends, with who I'm surrounded, and typically we're better for it. Just like you said, you go through the hard time and it's terrible, but on the other side, you're like, I can see God's provision, his faithfulness. I'm a different person. I know for me, I love people more now that I've gone through a hard time.
I can relate to him now.
Yeah.
I can relate I'm not Lindsey could tell you, I'm not sympathetic or empathetic, but when I've gone through something, you're like, ooh, like I know what heartache is. Like I know they need support, they need help when I've gone through it.
Well, and you do have a choice, and we counsel lots of people, and in that crisis mode, everyone has a choice. Am I going to run to God or away from God? And we've seen people do both, but 9 times out of 10, when people, or 10 out of 10 actually, when people follow Christ after that, the hard thing was the best thing that ever happened to them. As hard as it is, it's the best thing that ever happened because y'all's whole life has changed.
Ever since y'all went through that difficult time, you've just been on this upward climb towards Christ. And so encouraging for me as the pastor because you guys are applying the Word of God. You guys are like actually picking up what I'm putting down. You're actually
catching what you're throwing.
You're actually catching what I'm throwing. Like you guys have ordered your entire family, your marriage, your kids, your life around the Word of God, Jesus Christ, the church, surrounding yourself with the right people, pouring your life into the kids.
We're still not perfect, but yes.
But yes, so when you became a leader of a small group, did that challenge you? Because now you're not just showing up for small group. You're having to prepare and lead other people. And the same with the kids on Wednesday night. Like you're having Do you find that your faith has really grown and your knowledge has grown because you're not just doing it for yourself, you're leading other people?
And I think the accountability. Like now you're like, are you doing what you're supposed to do? And you have the authority to challenge people. You have the authority to hold people accountable. And now you're like, they can also hold you accountable. So I think, I think you're looked at now as a leader. You're looked at as people that are helping people grow. Like I think it's a heightened sense of like, I can't let them down either. Like, so I think there's a part of that, but the small group with the kids is totally different too. I mean,
I don't see how y'all do it. Like, I'm really good with kids, and like once people are in college, but like the 6th through 12th grade,
they're not the most
I'm
fun.
I'm out. Like, I lead a ladies' small group, and we meet on Wednesday nights simultaneous to youth, just so the moms can come. And I cannot stand it. I can't even stand walking through the building with them throwing things everywhere, and
it smells bad too.
Smells bad. It's terrible.
See, you should be throwing things everywhere though.
I know, it's totally fun, and I'm
break things. That's okay.
I'm totally for it. And every Thursday it's cleaned up, but every Wednesday night I'm like, oh.
It smells like a locker room in the auditorium when you have all those middle school kids sweating and running around. And
well, I would never want to teach middle school ever. I mean, I'm with you there.
To be clear,
yeah, it's just it's different having just your little tight knit group.
But that's what's cool about when you're volunteering up there and when you have kids those ages, because, just like Adam Wilson and those they volunteered before us and they move out, the Bryces are, on their way out, like they're moving out as well. Like, and somebody will move in, and somebody will take your spot, but it's kind of cool because your kids are in that spot. Your kids are in that realm. So it helps you relate to your kids better. So you kind of know I'm helping their friends, and she's led, I don't know, 15 to 20 of them to Christ in her small group this year, like that are now our girls. I mean, they're our girls' friends, and she's baptized them. Like, that's a cool feeling. Like, we're bringing people along for the ride, but it's also surrounding our daughter with people that have faith. I mean, that's an awesome, it's an awesome byproduct of investing in your time. You're also investing in your children. Like, I mean, they're up there. Now I have the 6th grade boys, and Lindsay has the 6th grade girls. So Nicholas is in 7th grade. So I don't have any kid. I didn't have any kid I really knew. But now I've gotten to know them all, but I also know all the boys that might be dating Leah in the 6th grade. So
that's good to know.
It's good to know them too.
That's a great strategy for helping your daughter have Christian friends.
Yeah,
lead them all to Christ.
Absolutely,
bold strategy.
So are y'all going to stay with this age group? Like, are y'all going to keep moving up with them?
Yeah. Well, I'm planning to move up. I'm not sure what he's doing.
I think it just depends. I might move. I might go with Mac. Mac's going to go with Bear to high school. So one of our 8th grade leaders. So I might go up to their. They'll be 8th grade next year. He's Bear's leaving, so he might move up, and then I might move up and do the 8th grade group next year.
Okay.
But we'll stay in the.
My girls would revolt if I didn't move up with them.
That's so sweet.
They love her.
For some reason, I
well,
got them
small
pulled.
group leaders are super important. Jessie, I guess she pulled her leader out the other day to have a conversation with her because one of her friends told her that he was gender fluid, and she was confused by it. And so she talked to her small group leader before she talked to me about it. And so, I mean, y'all have a super important role. You partner with the parent, and it's like, as parents, I need other strong people talking into my kids and speaking truth.
And at the same time, not overstepping the bounds, because you're not their mother.
No.
You're not their father. Like, one of my big things with my group is always like, are you honoring your mother and father? Like, they're the most important people in your life. Like, I'm trying to reinforce that in my groups all the time. Like, I'm not your dad. I'm not taking the spot of your dad. I'm not cooler than your dad. Your dad's freaking awesome. Like, he's flipping fantastic. And we're trying to help build a relationship, love on him, but also point him towards, like, you better do what the Bible tells you to do. You better honor your mother and father. So I do think that's an important distinction, because I've seen it where you be friends, and I said this in the first meeting we had this year with Colton when they're doing our small groups. I'm like, listen, we're not their friends. We're not taking the place of their parents. Like, we can love on them, but we still need to hold them accountable and still point them towards having a great relationship with their friends, or with their parents, excuse me. Mm-hmm. So it is a tough, but it's a great spear. But exactly what you said. We want as many people as we can pouring into our kids that are like-minded, that want to pour into our kids with God, with love. Like, We want as much as that as possible.
Thank you for listening to this week's Family Goals podcast with Davey, Pollack, and Pastor Jay. It was great hearing about each of their commitments in their marriage to purity before they got married. For the moms out there with little kids, Lindsey opened up about the daily struggle of raising little kids and how her and Davey had lost focus for a little while and how they regained that focus on the Lord. If you feel like you and your family have lost focus on Jesus and he's not your number one in your life or your marriage, I would encourage you to look at those areas of your life that you need to surrender to Jesus and making sure that you're putting him first in all areas. Thank you again for listening to the Family Goals podcast, and we'll catch you next week.